Hello, welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation, the show about how to have a better relationship with your dog and cat. I'm Zazie Todd, author of the books Wag and Purr and creator of Companion Animal Psychology blog. My co-host Kristi Benson is a dog trainer and anthropologist, and she also works for the Academy for Dog Trainers. We don't give advice on your pet, so if you have concerns, see your veterinarian, dog trainer or cat behaviourist as appropriate. Thanks for joining us today. Hi everybody, welcome to the Positive Post in Conversation. I'm Zazie Todd and I'm joined as always by my friend and colleague Kristi Benson. Hi Kristi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I'm really excited because we're joined by a very special guest today, Kate LaSala from Rescued by Training. Hi Kate, how are you?
Hello, I am good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. So Kate LaSala, CTC, is a professional dog trainer and a certified behavior consultant, and she specializes in fear and aggression. She's helped over 2,400 dogs overcome issues that their guardians thought were impossible, including fear of strangers, separation anxiety, resource guarding, and growling at toddlers. As a licensed family pause parent educator, she's uniquely qualified to help families with babies and kids. She offers one-on-one remote services worldwide and self-paced courses, including her new online course, Bringing Home Baby, Preparing Dog and Family for a New Baby. So she's here today to talk to us about how you can welcome a new baby into your home when you have a dog. So how did you originally get involved in this specialty, Kate, of preparing dogs and families for a new baby?
So because I focus on fear and aggression, I started getting a lot of requests from families that had dogs who were struggling with babies when they were bringing them home. So they'd bring their newborns home and the dog would be afraid of the baby. They'd be growling or clearly uncomfortable. So the parents would seek out someone, my dog's aggressive towards my child. And since I didn't have children of my own, I was feeling a little ill-equipped to tackle the child side of things. So then I sought out Family Paws and the Family Dog programs and went through both of their programs to be a little more educated about the kid side of things so that I could combine some child development education with my dog education and sort of marry those two pieces together. And I've continued to maintain both of those licenses throughout my certification. So I'm currently still a licensed Family Paws educator, and that education has, helped me develop my course that I just released, but it's really helped me work with these families with, kids of all ages. So infants through school age kids.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's such an interesting question, isn't it, about the kid thing? Like, I think we're all pretty comfortable with adults in our interactions with dogs and how to teach adults. Mm-hmm. And I actually find like the whole question of pedagogy with adults to be super fascinating because it is a discipline and it is something that we can learn about. But then you throw in the kid thing and there's like the developmental stuff and management stuff. Yeah. So what are some of the big issues that people have when they come to you when they're expecting? Baby's not here yet. I don't know how often that actually happens.
I think a lot of people don't even know that pre-baby prep exists. They don't know to seek it out. They don't know that it's a thing. And so I get a lot of people who don't come to me until the dog is already struggling. They have the baby at home, so they're reactive. The dog is having issues with the newborn, and so they come sort of reactively because they're having a problem now. So that happens a lot. But in, the point of my course and what I would love to get out there is that pre-baby prep is a thing, and I wish more people knew about it, and I wish more people did it. So I think people, even if they know that it's a thing, they seriously underestimate the amount of time and preparation that it takes to really help a dog prepare for all the changes that happen when we're about to bring a baby into the home. So, if we think about all the changes that are going to happen. So if your dog is sleeping with you and you plan on having your newborn co-sleeping or sleeping in your bedroom in a bassinet, we're going to need to change that because the dog and the baby cannot be sleeping in the same room. That's just not safe. So if your dog is used to sleeping in your room, my dog sleeps in the same room as me. If I were to have a newborn sleeping in my bedroom, that would be a huge adjustment for her to suddenly not be sleeping in our bedroom. So that is going to take months and months and months for her to acclimate to that change. It's not just going to happen in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So that's something that we would need to work on long before the baby arrives. If your dog, like many dogs before there's a baby in the house, is the center of your world, is the center of all of your attention and everything, there may be attention-seeking behaviors that they're used to doing when they want food or they want attention or they want to play. We may need to reduce some of those attention-seeking behaviors because suddenly maybe they're either not safe if you have a newborn. Boo-boo, my dog, when she wants attention, she'll just come up and sort of whack me with her paw. And I think it's adorable, so I have heavily reinforced that behavior. But if I was holding a newborn and she were to walk up and whack me with her paw, she could inadvertently hurt that baby. So that's a behavior that I would need to reduce because that would be unsafe. Even a dog who just barks at you for attention if they want something, that may not be unsafe, but it would be really annoying. And if you're trying to put a newborn down to sleep and your dog is barking at you because they want something, that could really disrupt the household. So there's a lot of sort of attention-seeking behaviors. If your dog jumps up at you for attention or whatnot, we need to put those things on extinction or try to minimize them or teach an alternate behavior that's not going to be so dangerous or disruptive. And those behaviors, if they've been really well rehearsed and practiced for a long time, that can take a long time to undo those behaviors. So I think people underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take to sort of roll back the clock on those things. So even if they know that pre-baby prep is a thing, I actually just had someone reach out to me this past week, like, okay, well, we're thinking about doing pre-baby prep, in our third trimester. And I'm like, no. You're pregnant now. You're in your first trimester. Let's get this ball rolling now. Let's do it now. Don't wait until your third trimester. And then we also want to talk about getting the dog on what I call a baby flexible schedule. So if your dog is used to eating at 7:00 in the morning and going out at 7:30, we need to get that dog on a baby-friendly schedule. So poopy diaper might happen at 7 a.m. and that's going to mean that dog's not going to get fed at 7 a.m. And we need to start to transition dog to a baby flexible schedule because things are not always going to happen at the exact same times that the dog is used to things happening.
Yeah, so there's actually such a lot that people can do. And I think you're right. Most people don't know that they can do these things before the baby arrives and that it's so important to do them a long time before. As you say, it takes time. Mm-hmm. So suppose someone hasn't done any of these things and they've just brought the baby home. What kinds of issues do people have with their dog then?
So a lot of dogs do struggle with those sudden changes in routine. So now the baby is home and walk time isn't happening, or maybe they're not getting the attention or exercise that they're used to getting. So maybe that's causing a little bit of frustration because they've got all this pent-up energy that they're not burning off because they're not getting exercise. They're not getting the attention because they're used to being the center of the universe. And now all of that attention is focused on baby, as it should be. Visitors might be coming in to visit the baby and not really paying attention to the dog. And so there's going to be lots of changes happening in the household, and that can be really frustrating for the dog. There may also be cases where the dog wasn't properly socialized early on to infants or toddlers or children in general. And so there could be some fear issues popping out if there's lack of socialization or bad experiences with children. Newborns, they're up every 2 hours for feeding. So not only are the parents' sleep schedules being disrupted, but we're going to have the dog's sleep schedule being disrupted. Dog might be cranky or sensitive and having behaviors popping out because they're not getting as much sleep as they should be getting, just like everybody in the household. So all of those things can sort of exacerbate issues or cause new issues to pop out, things that we may not have seen previously.
I think one of the scariest things, I imagine it's got to be one of the scariest things for new parents, is if their dog is actually displaying aggressive behavior towards their baby or around their baby. So what should people do if their dog growls or starts to show indicate that they're uncomfortable with their body language once the baby comes home?
Yeah. Growling's always scary, but it's especially scary if it's towards your, precious newborn that you've just brought home and is only 2 days old. And our instinct is going to be to get the dog to stop growling. So our instinct may be to yell and be like, no, stop doing that, or punish them for growling. But we want to not do that, or that may be our instinct, but we want to try to not do that and try to remember that growling is the dog's way of communicating that they're upset or scared. So growling's actually good because it's the dog's way of telling us that they're upset. And if the dog didn't growl, the only way that they would tell us that they're upset would be to bite. So growling's actually good. And as counterintuitive as it may feel, we actually want to try to happy talk and try to de-escalate, try to feed in that situation. Practically speaking, you want to create distance. So you want to separate the dog and the baby as quickly as possible. You want to try to either move the dog or the baby away and physically separate them with a baby gate. Maybe put the dog away behind a door or something like that, as gently and, positively as possible. So you don't want to, forcefully grab the dog and, drag him off. But then you really do want to contact a qualified professional like me or someone else for qualified professional help to help your dog learn how to be more comfortable around your newborn. You may also want to talk to your vet to see if medication may be appropriate to help your dog be less anxious through this transition, especially if your dog has noise sensitivities. There may be some sound sensitivity stuff at play. Babies cry a lot. They make a lot of noise. So if your dog does have noise sensitivity stuff, there could be that element at play. So your vet may be able to help you from a medication standpoint, but you do want to work with someone to figure out a plan to create management and to create a way to help long-term help your dog be comfortable in that household. Your dog and your baby are going to be living together for many, many years. And, we have to come up with a way to create a space where they can both live happy, healthy lives and share that space together.
Yeah. And I know that one of the things you've got in your course is actually an action plan for what to do if the dog growls at baby, because that's such a scary time for people. Mm-hmm. But can you tell us something about what else is in your course that makes your course different from some of the other courses that are available out there?
Yeah. So, a lot of the things that are out there are actually kind of short, hour and a half long webinars, not really comprehensive courses. So my course is a really in-depth course. It's 18 modules. It covers exactly what to train, how to do it. It's not just tips here and there. And, my goal with doing this was, life with baby and dog is more than just tips. It's your dog and your baby and their safety together is so important that it can't just be covered in tips. It's really, really, the crux of it is how to keep everyone safe and happy. So there's 18 modules. I cover why a dog might be fearful, where fear in dogs comes from. I cover dog body language, how animals learn, differences in how our species communicate, and then from a training perspective, over 36 training plans of what to train with supporting videos, enrichment videos, other handouts, dog communication, tracking your dog's body language, developmental milestones, identifying your dog's triggers. So if we think about, different breeds are going to have different triggers. If you have a herding breed, things that move, their inclination is going to be to chase it. So if we apply that to children, a toddler running, a herding breed is going to be more inclined to chase a toddler who runs. So you really want to think about your dog's triggers and identify those so that we can plan for your specific dog and what might trigger them versus some other person's dog, how your dog gets your attention, and then developing a homecoming plan. So thinking about things like when you're changing a diaper where do you want your dog? What do you want your dog to be doing? And then what do we need to train in order to make that happen? When visitors come over to visit the baby, what do you want your dog to do? Where do you want him to be? What do we need to train to make that happen? So we, come up with this homecoming plan, and then there are training plans to help you, figure that all out, and videos to go with all of that. So there's over 36 training plans. I also include a membership in my private Facebook community where I have scheduled office hours, where I have a Zoom and you can pop in during office hours if you have a question, if there's something that you're unsure about and you want to meet with me during office hours. So that's included in the course as well. And then beyond that, there's also a voucher for a discounted rate. If you decide you want to have a one-on-one video session with me, there's a discounted rate for a single video session. So if you decide you go through the whole course, office hours, aren't enough and you still want to do a one-on-one session with me, you get a discount on that. So there's really a whole lot of stuff that's included in that is just so far beyond just like a 60-minute webinar that so many other, people offer out there.
Yeah, it sounds very comprehensive. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Is that part of why you decided to offer a course like this? Is just you sort of took the temperature of what kind of offerings were available for people to do it yourself kind of thing? And
yeah. And,
there's a gap.
Yeah, I felt like there was a gap. And I also felt like my one-on-one financially may not have been accessible to everyone. So I like the self-paced course for a couple reasons. One, it's flexible, so it's not tied to anyone's schedule, so they can kind of do it at their own pace. I like that it's a more affordable price point for people who may not be able to afford private one-on-one training, or who just want to do sort of a DIY approach to training. But I also feel like it's a little more comprehensive than what I can do during a one-on-one session, because I'm not tied to a fixed time frame of, okay, we have this time slot on Zoom to go through this. And I can actually include a lot more content and information in a self-paced course because people are going through it at their own pace. So I actually kind of feel like it's more comprehensive than what I cover in my one-on-one sessions in a sense, because it's packed with information, but I don't have to worry about cramming it into a 2-hour, private session.
I've always felt like when you're dealing with somebody in a self-paced online course, there's a little bit less need for sort of myth busting. I mean, you have to myth bust for sure, but I feel like people can read it and go away and like process and think about it and then come back and maybe read it again. So, you're still getting your message across, but you're not like when you're sitting across a table from someone and if they have a myth that's important, and as a dog trainer, it's important for us to sort of like swim through that. You can take this colossal effort, changing someone's mind is a big deal. It's not a mind.
Yeah.
So I like that about.
I do myth busting in the course. So one of the biggest myths that I bust is the whole bringing home the baby blanket myth, So that is one of the most pervasive things that birthing professionals still put out there is like, oh, just bring home the baby blanket and your dog will miraculously love your baby. And I wish that little piece of information would just go away, because it's just not that simple. If it was that simple, we wouldn't need a course like this. We wouldn't need dog professionals to educate people on how to get their dog to like their baby. I tell people, unless your baby is in the unfortunate situation where they're in the NICU or they're in the hospital for an extended period of time, the amount of time and effort that we would need to have with a baby blanket that smells like your baby to condition your dog to build that association through scent to associate your baby's smell to your dog, to build that positive association is so long and would take such an intense amount of training. We're not going to get that with 1 or 2 exposures. And if we think about, maybe one, the partner is bringing the baby blanket home from the hospital, that baby blanket doesn't just smell like the baby. It smells like the hospital. It smells like the person who's bringing it home. It smells like medication. It smells like whatever they wipe the baby down with. It smells like so many other things. And now we're bringing this blanket home and we're sort of shoving it in the dog's face, and we're like, "Ooh, what's this? What's this? What's this?" And we're making a big deal about this thing, and the dog's like, "Wait, what are you doing? Why are you shoving this thing in my face?" And we're kind of like freaking this dog out, and we're not doing it in a very, we're well intentioned, but we're not accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish. And it's just not that simple. And so the sort of myth that OBGYNs or birthing doulas or whoever is, telling these expectant parents like, oh, just bring home the baby blanket and your dog will know to like your child that is the biggest myth out there. And it's just so not true. And I just wish that would go away. So that is one of the many myths that I do sort of myth bust in the course.
It would be it seems hilarious to me that out of all of the stimuli that make up a baby, scent would be the one that the dog would be like, oh, okay. I mean, there's also sound. And
sound, yep.
Stimuli. Like, I mean,
yep.
It's like it's a baby. Yeah.
It's a baby. It's a physical thing, and I think people also, especially if they're giving birth and they're not like adopting, I think there is also, we want to think like, oh, this baby came out of me. Somehow my dog will know that this baby came out of me. And there's this, my dog loves me. So my baby came out of me. So by default, my dog will love my baby because it's a part of me. And we want to assume that. And that's just not true, and especially if your dog was not properly socialized or didn't have the benefit of good socialization to children, that often is not the case. And babies, and more often than not toddlers, sometimes dogs are quote unquote fine with newborns because they don't do very much. We carry them around, they make some noise, they're a little stinky, and the dog sort of tolerates them. They put up with them. But then once the newborn moves into sort of mobility and they get a little mobile and they start to do stuff on their own and they get a little independent, then that's where a lot of dogs struggle. So once they move into sort of toddlerhood, that's where I get a lot more phone calls. And that's when people start to freak out like, oh, now that my baby's crawling and pursuing the dog, now the dog is growling, or now the dog is super uncomfortable. So I think that's something to also, think about, that just because your dog may be comfortable with your newborn, do not assume that will mean your dog is comfortable with your child moving forward into toddlerhood and school-aged age.
I think those like another important message is that just because your dog is uncomfortable with your toddler doesn't mean that they aren't going to like him as a little human or her as a little human, Right. Yeah, this is stuff we can train for. So
right.
I think that leads us into another our last question with you is, what's your favorite sort of factoid about child development, specifically sort of in regards to child-dog interactions that people listening to this podcast might be interested in?
So I like to talk about sort of the differences in the way our species communicate, especially in the way we show affection and create bonds. So if we think about, as humans, we're taught from a very early age to connect to each other by making direct eye contact. You meet someone, you make eye contact, you shake their hands. So when a baby's born and someone holds that newborn, we gaze directly into their eyes to like make a connection. So children are raised and make direct eye contact with each other. So they're going to try to translate that to other species. So as a child is interacting with a dog, they're going to try to stare directly at the dog's eyes. So as a toddler, they may be at sort of direct eye level if a toddler's standing. And for a dog, direct eye contact is often very confrontational. And that sets up some conflict. And then if we think about how we show affection, so as humans, what do? We often greet each other like very excitedly. We run towards each other. We embrace, we hug, we kiss. And for dogs, hugging and kissing, hugging is a uniquely primate way of showing affection. Hugging for dogs is restraint. And most dogs may tolerate hugging at best, but most dogs don't actually enjoy it. And if we think about when dogs get restrained, it's at the vet and the groomer. And for many dogs, those are not pleasant experiences. We can train them to like those experiences, but for many dogs, they're not inherently positive experiences. So for children, hugging is how we show affection to other humans, and they may want to hug a dog to show them that they love them or that they want to show affection to that dog, but that is going to be a conflict. And so I think we have to be really cognizant of that and start to teach from very early age how to properly interact with other species, and to just be really aware that a child is not going to know not to do those things. And we have to model, as adults, we have to model appropriate interactions with the dogs in front of the children. So even if your dog tolerates or maybe, puts up with you hugging them, that's something you don't want to model in front of your child, because children are always watching and learning. And so you may hug your dog and think, oh, it's fine. She'll put up with that from you as the adult, but you don't want to do that in front of your child, because your child is going to model that behavior, and that's not something that's necessarily going to be safe. And that's also not something that you want to teach your child is safe to do, because then if they go to your neighbor's house and think that that's safe to do with all dogs, if your dog tolerates it, they may go to your neighbor's house and your neighbor's dog may not tolerate that. And then you're going to have a dog that's biting your kid.
Yeah, and I think that shows just how complicated this all is, because you have to think about the dog's perspective. You have to think about how the child is seeing things, which changes as they mature. And then you have to think about what you're modeling for your child to do. So that just goes to show how important it is to have a course like this. So just to give the title of the course again, it's Bringing Home Baby, Preparing Dog and Family for a New Baby. And it sounds wonderful and so comprehensive. So in a moment, we're going to go and talk about books and move on to that section. But before we do that, if people want to check out your course, because I think anyone who's going to be having a baby and they have a dog at home should be checking out your course, where can they go to find out more about it, and where can they follow you on social media?
Yep. So I am rescuedbytraining.com. And at the top of the page, you'll see online courses, and all of my online courses are there. And then on social media, Rescued by Training, primarily Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for coming to share some of your wisdom from the course with us. I know this is going to be a really popular episode, because this is a topic that so many people struggle with. And as you said earlier, people don't realize that it really helps to do that preparation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to get this information out, because, the more we can prepare people ahead of time, the less, the safer kids are going to be, the less returns and surrenders to shelters that we have for dogs biting children. And that's really my goal, is to help families stay together and to reduce dog bites.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to the book section. And so I'm going to start with you, Kate, and ask you to share a book that you have been reading recently that you've enjoyed, or that you've just started that you're really looking forward to.
So my book is not a happy-go-lucky book, but it's a really important book. So it's Never Long Enough. And it is very comprehensive. It's a thick book, but it is, I live with Boo Boo, who's 15 years old and 2 months. Last year, we lost our other senior dog, who was 14, Mr. Barbo. And this book is a practical guide to caring for your geriatric dog. It's from Dr. Mary Gardner, and it is fantastic. It kind of takes you through just all of your old dog stuff from, early aging all the way through sort of death and aftercare and, memorialization and everything. And is just really sort of your old dog Bible in a sense. But it's sad, but having a senior is an honor, to have a dog get to that ripe old age, and, being as educated and doing everything that you can for these seniors is just so important. So, one of the other things that I have in my toolbox is I'm also an end-of-life death doula for companion animals. So this was sort of part of that, just helping people navigate losing their dogs. And so having seniors myself and being a death doula for companion animals, I just think it's so important to try to do it as best as we can and help them as much as we can in those senior years. So
yeah. So that was It's Never Long Enough by Dr. Mary Gardner. And I think I'm going to be going and ordering that book as soon as we get off this recording, because I have a senior dog too. So it sounds like a really helpful, useful book. So thank you for mentioning it. Kristi, what are you reading at the moment?
Well, I recently got this book out of the library.
My Biggest Mistake by Terry O'Reilly.
My Biggest Mistake, Epic Fails and Silver Linings by Terry O'Reilly. Terry O'Reilly is like he's been on CBC. He used to have a show, or maybe he still does, on CBC radio. And he did advertising for many years. He's quite a well-known advertising guru. And so he had a lot of interesting sort of topics about, because advertising is really about humans, and it's about how humans pay attention to things and get sort of sucked into things. So it's always been interesting listening to his show. I've always enjoyed his show. And he has a nice radio voice, which I think helps. It's something called The Age of Persuasion or something. I can hear it in my voice. So anyway, this is just about, I've only read a couple chapters so far, but it's like about, a project was planned in this way and a mistake happened, and then it happened in this way, and it was like fantastic or terrible, So I kind of, just because I like Terry O'Reilly and because I make a lot of mistakes, I thought this would be so far it's been quite interesting.
Yeah, that sounds really good. You said he has a good radio voice. Do you hear it in his voice when you're reading it?
I didn't. Now that you say that, I don't think I did. But I mean, he definitely has a style, like a narrative style that carries through the book. So
good. Well, that sounds like a very good read too. Mine is fiction. Mine is The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks, and that's by Shauna Robinson. And it is one of those novels about someone who goes off to a small town. But in this case, it's someone who has never really found the career that she wants, and she keeps moving from job to job, and she doesn't have any security. So she goes for a short period to help her best friend with the bookshop that she runs. And her best friend is all sorted because she manages this bookshop and she has a husband and a family and all those things that Maggie Banks doesn't have. But the thing is, it's a slightly weird bookshop because it's in a town that gets lots of tourists because of a famous literary author who lived there, Edward Bell, and the bookshop is run by the Literary Society, and they only allow the store to sell books that are up to the time of that author, so no modern books. And so she's thinking, what can I do? I mean, she's bored there to start, and she's thinking, what can I do to, and also she knows that people want modern books sometimes, so she starts selling them under the counter. And so she has secret books, and she also has she starts organizing events with the help of someone that she meets, and she has a bit of a challenge going on with someone else that she meets from the town, who turns out to be, there's a romantic interest in the book, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's really about the books and what will happen when the Literary Society finds out that she's been going against the rules and selling these banned books. So it's a really nice story. It's really fun, and it's one of those books that you just pick up and you just want to keep on reading to the end to get through and see what happens. So for anyone who loves books and bookstores, it's I think an especially wonderful read, I think. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that. And it's cheerful. It's also, I felt like something cheerful to read, and it definitely fitted that need. It was really, really fun.
It's a good counterpoint to my book.
Yeah. Both types of books need to exist in the world. And sometimes you only want one kind. Yeah. Okay. So that brings us to the end of this episode. We've been joined today by Kate LaSala of Rescued by Training. Thank you, Kate, for coming to tell us so much and sharing so much wisdom about your course on bringing home baby, what people can do to help their dogs adjust to that transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
bye, everybody.
Thank you to everyone who's been listening or watching, and please hit the subscribe button to make sure that you never miss a show in future, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Positive Posting Conversation. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show and write us a review via your podcast app. For the show notes, visit companionanimalpsychology.com. This show was produced by Zazie Todd. The music is Melody from Paris by Studio Le Bousse. See you next time.